The night sky was quiet, painted in shades of deep blue and black, with the stars flickering faintly above. Sundar Pichai sat in the plush seat of his private jet, staring out of a small oval window. To anyone else, it might have seemed like the perfect flight, calm, smooth, and filled with comfort. But inside Sundar's mind, a storm was brewing. He had just left an important meeting in Europe, one that could shape the future of Google's technology for the next decade. The stakes were high, but he carried the burden with a calm face. His team admired him for that. What they didn't know was how heavy his heart felt tonight as the engines hummed and the jet sliced through the sky. Sundar closed his eyes for a moment, trying to rest, but something felt off. It wasn't the usual nervousness before a big decision. It was something deeper, an uneasy sense that the night would not end as simply as it had begun. The pilot's voice soon came through the intercom, breaking the silence. "Mr. Pichai, we might face some turbulence ahead. Nothing serious. Just keeping you informed." Sundar gave a small nod, even though the pilot couldn't see him. He appreciated honesty, especially in moments when trust meant everything. But within minutes, the calm flight began to shift. The jet shook lightly at first, just a gentle reminder of the unpredictable skies. Sundar didn't flinch. He had traveled enough to know turbulence was normal. Yet, as the minutes stretched on, the shaking grew stronger. Glasses clinked against the tables. A folder slid from the seat beside him. And the hum of the engines sounded different, strained, almost as if the jet itself was under pressure. Sundar quotes as assistant, who sat 2 rows back, looked up nervously. "Sir, should we be worried?" he asked, his voice low, as though speaking louder would worsen the situation. Sundar leaned forward, calm but alert. "Let's not jump to fear. The pilots are trained for this. Let's trust them." Still, deep inside, Sundar felt the unease. Growing? It wasn't just turbulence. Something else was happening. The pilot's voice returned, but this time, it carried a tone of urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a technical issue. One of our systems has given a warning signal. As a precaution, we will need to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport. Please remain calm. Emergency landing." The words cut through the cabin like a blade. Sundar's assistant gasped quietly. The 2 other staff members on board exchanged worried glances. Sundar, however, stayed composed. He had always believed that in moments of chaos, one leader's calmness could anchor everyone else. But inside, he was asking questions. What was the technical issue? How serious was it? Was there safety at risk? He wanted to know not just for himself, but for everyone on board. The jet began its descent, but the air outside seemed to resist. The turbulence grew wilder, the cabin lights flickered, and for a moment, the world outside the window was nothing but thick, swirling clouds. The jet shook violently, and a tray crashed to the floor. Sundar's heart pounded, but he kept his face steady. "Sir, are we going to be okay?" His assistant asked again, his hands gripping the armrests tightly. Sundar looked at him, his eyes steady, and said, "Yes, we will be okay. Stay calm." But even as he spoke those words, the pilot's voice returned, sharper this time. "Control is harder than expected. We may not reach the nearest airport. We might have to attempt an emergency landing on a different strip. Prepare yourselves." The cabin went silent. No one moved. Fear hung heavy in the air, thicker than the turbulence shaking the jet. Sundar leaned back, his eyes fixed on the window, but his mind raced out, and then suddenly the jet dropped sharply, as if pulled by an unseen force. Gasps filled the cabin. Sundar gripped the armrest, his knuckles tight. The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed off for a long second before dim emergency lights blinked on. "What's happening?" his assistant whispered, his voice trembling. Sundar didn't answer right away. He was listening to the engines, to the silence between the noises, to the way the jet fought against the sky. He knew one thing, something more than a technical glitch was at play. And then, as the jet continued its rough descent, Sundar's phone vibrated on the seat beside him. Confused, he picked it up. There was no signal, no service in the skies at this height. Yet, a message had come through. He opened it slowly, his eyes narrowing as he read the words. We know who you are. The jet will not land safely unless you do exactly as instructed. The message stopped his breath. His hands trembled slightly, though he quickly tightened his grip to hide it. This was no coincidence. This was planned. He looked up, his calm eyes meeting his assistant's frightened ones. The assistant whispered, Sir, what is it? Sundar's voice was quiet but firm. Nothing we can't handle. Stay strong. But inside, Sundar knew the truth. The emergency wasn't just about the jet. Someone had forced this situation. Someone was watching, and the real fear was only beginning. Asterisk the silence after Sundar read that chilling message felt heavier than the turbulence shaking the jet. The words on his phone burned into his mind. We know who you are. The jet will not land safely unless you do exactly as instructed. He stared at the glowing screen, his mind racing. How had this message even arrived when there was no signal? Who was behind it? And more importantly, how much control did they truly have over the plane? The engines roared outside as the jet fought against the storm clouds. Every jolt reminded Sundar that their time was running short. His assistant leaned forward, whispering nervously, Sir, what's happening? You look pale. Is there something you're not telling us? Sundar forced himself to breathe slowly, to keep his expression calm, even as unease knotted his chest. He had always believed that true leadership was not about making speeches in bright rooms, but about holding steady in the darkest storms. Everything would be fine, he said softly, though deep down he knew those words were more for his assistant than for himself. He turned his phone face down on the seat, not ready to reveal the message. He needed time to think. Fear spread quickly if not managed carefully. One word of panic could make his small team spiral, and right now they needed clarity. Not chaos but the unease only grew stronger when the pilot's strained voice crackled through the cabin once more. Mr. Pichai, we are losing one of the engine systems. We're diverting. Brace yourselves, we may need to land in a less controlled area. A less controlled area. Sundar's heart sank. That could mean anything, an abandoned airstrip, a rural field, maybe even water if no land was available in time. He glanced again at the message on his phone, realizing the two events, the technical failure and the warning, were connected. Someone was behind this, and their plan was unfolding step by step. His assistant looked like he might break down. Sweat rolled down his forehead, his hands trembling as he held the armrest. Sir, I don't want to die. I don't want to. His voice cracked, and Sundar leaned toward him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Listen to me, Sundar said firmly, his voice low but commanding. You will not die tonight. None of us will, but we must stay calm. Panic won't help us. Do you trust me? The assistant swallowed hard, his eyes wide, then nodded slowly. Sundar gave him a small reassuring squeeze on the shoulder before sitting back. His own heart thundered in his chest, but he knew fear must not be visible. If he lost his composure, they all would doubt then. As if timed with cruel precision, his phone buzzed again. He picked it up, and another message appeared. Your life and theirs are in your hands. When the plane lands, you will leave with the bag near your seat. Do not alert anyone. Do this, and everyone survives. Refuse, and you will all burn in the sky. Sundar's gaze shot to the seat beside him where a leather bag sat, one that wasn't his. His brows furrowed. He hadn't noticed it before. His assistant hadn't carried it on board, and it wasn't part of his luggage. The bag looked ordinary, yet its sudden presence chilled him. Who had placed it there? His throat tightened as realization struck. The bag could be more than luggage. It could be a warning. Or, worse, a bomb, for the first time in years, Sundar felt true fear claw at his composure. But he refused to let it control him. He straightened in his seat, his mind racing. Should he open the bag now and risk whatever danger it carried? Or should he follow the instructions, knowing that doing so could place everyone in even greater danger. His assistant noticed his gaze on the bag. Sir, what is that? Is that yours? Sundar shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable. No, but leave it alone. The assistant looked horrified. You think it's... Sundar interrupted sharply, but calmly. Don't think. Don't assume. Just breathe. You must not act recklessly. The jet lurched suddenly, sending glasses crashing and lights flickering. Screams erupted from one of the staff members in the back. Sundar turned, his calm tone steadying them. Hold on tight. Stay seated. We'll get through this. Inside, his mind was already planning. If the bag was truly dangerous, then the person behind these messages might be monitoring them somehow. Any sudden move might trigger disaster. He slipped the phone under his leg, hiding it. His thoughts returned to the bigger question. Why him? Why tonight? He was a CEO, yes, but not a man who had enemies in the obvious sense. His leadership style was known for humility and fairness, not ruthless power. Yet, as he thought deeper, he realized that success always carried silent shadows. Competitors, disgruntled ex-employees, extremist groups, anyone could have orchestrated this. The pilot's voice came again, more urgent than ever. Brace yourselves, we're preparing for an emergency descent. We may not reach the official runway. Hold on. The cabin tilted and Sundar felt his stomach drop as the jet dove lower. The engines straining. Outside the windows, flashes of lightning lit up the sky, followed by the deep rumble of thunder. It felt as if nature itself was echoing the terror inside the cabin. His phone buzzed one more time. The third message appeared. This is your final warning. Protect the bag. When we land, follow the instructions waiting for you. If you resist, none of you will survive. Sundar exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on the armrest. His eyes shifted once more to the bag. The fate of everyone on board, perhaps even more beyond them, seemed tied to it, and as the jet shuddered violently and the emergency lights flickered, Sundar knew this was no ordinary threat. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about fame, it was about control, fear, and something much larger than he yet understood. His assistant, pale and shaking, whispered again, Sir, what's inside that bag? Sundar turned to him, his eyes deep with determination. We'll find out soon enough. Just then, the pilot shouted over the intercom, his voice breaking with urgency. We've lost another system. Prepare for immediate impact. This will not be smooth. The cabin erupted in cries, prayers, and panic. Sundar closed his eyes for a brief moment, his hand unconsciously resting on the mysterious bag, as if fate itself demanded he claim it. He whispered under his breath, words no one else heard. Please, let us survive this landing. And then, with a deafening roar, the jet plunged lower, the ground rushing closer, and everything around them shook violently, as if the world was splitting apart. Asterisk, the impact came like thunder, splitting the earth. The jet slammed onto the rough ground with a force that jolted every bone in Sundar's body. Trays flew, luggage burst from compartments, and screams filled the cabin like echoes of despair. Sundar's seatbelt cut into his shoulder as the jet skidded violently, sparks shooting outside the window as metal scraped against the earth. His heart pounded in his chest, every second stretching into eternity. The world tilted, then jolted. Again, and finally, with a final shuddering roar, the jet screeched to a halt. Silence followed, heavy and unsettling. Only the faint hum of the emergency systems remained, along with the sound of people breathing hard, some sobbing, some whispering desperate prayers. Sundar opened his eyes slowly. His hands were gripping, the armrest so tightly his knuckles ached. He looked around. The emergency lights bathed the cabin in a dim red glow, making every face look ghostly. His assistant sat frozen, his chest heaving, his eyes wide and unfocused. One staff member was clutching her arm, wincing in pain, while the other kept murmuring, We're alive? We're alive? Over and over, as if to convince himself that survival was real. Sundar took a deep breath, forcing himself to sit upright. His head hurt and his body trembled slightly, but he knew he had no time to indulge fear. Leadership meant rising, even when your legs wanted to collapse. He unclipped his seatbelt and turned toward his assistant. Are you okay? The young man nodded shakily, though tears clung to the corners of his eyes. I thought it was over. But it's not, Sundar said firmly. We're still here. And as long as we are, we must stay strong. As he spoke those words, his gaze shifted to the seat beside him. The bag. It hadn't moved far during the crash, only slid slightly against the cushion. It looked untouched, undisturbed, as if it had been waiting for him all along. A cold shiver ran through him before he could think further. The cockpit door burst open. The pilot staggered out, his uniform drenched in sweat, his face pale. We managed to bring her down, but not safely. The systems are dead. We're stranded. Where? Are we? Sundar asked. The pilot shook his head. An abandoned strip, somewhere off route. It wasn't on the official radar, but it was the only flat ground nearby. I don't know who even maintains this place anymore. An abandoned strip. Sundar's unease deepened. Was this coincidence or part of the plan of whoever sent those messages? The pilot added, We need to exit the jet. Fuel could be leaking. It's not safe to stay inside. Everyone scrambled to unbuckle and move, though fear made their hands clumsy. Sundar stayed behind a moment longer, his eyes still fixed on the bag. The messages had been clear: protect it, carry it, follow instructions. But every instinct inside him screamed that the bag was more dangerous than anything else. Here, his assistant noticed his hesitation. Sir, leave it, please. Let's just get out. Sundar paused, torn. But before he could decide, his phone buzzed again. Another message flashed across the screen. Take the bag with you. Cameras are watching. One wrong move and this field becomes your grave. His heart dropped. Cameras? He glanced around the dim cabin. He saw nothing, but that didn't mean they weren't hidden. The thought that unseen eyes were tracking every move only made his skin crawl. He exhaled slowly, picked up the bag and slung it over his shoulder. It felt heavier than it looked, as though the weight inside wasn't just physical but symbolic danger. Fear and fate all pressed into one. His assistant stared at him in horror. Sir, why? What if... Trust me, Sundar interrupted quietly. We don't have a choice. Together they followed the others out of the emergency exit. The air outside was sharp, cold, and filled with the smell of burned rubber and fuel. The landing strip stretched out into darkness, cracked and broken, with weeds pushing through. It was clear this place hadn't seen real use in years. The staff huddled together near the wing, shivering, their voices low. The pilot was already examining the jet with a flashlight, muttering about damage. Sundar stood apart, clutching the bag, his eyes scanning the shadows around them and then he saw them dot in the distance. Barely visible under the weak moonlight, figures were moving. Slow, deliberate steps across the cracked runway. Sundar's breath caught. At first, he thought they were rescue workers or maybe locals drawn by the noise of the crash. But as the figures came closer, their movements revealed something else. They were coordinated, walking in a formation, their silhouettes dark and imposing. His assistant gasped softly. Sir, do you see them? Sundar nodded, his chest tightening. Yes, stay calm. The figures stopped about 20 meters away. One of them stepped forward, raising a hand. In the dim light, Sundar could just barely make out a mask covering the man's face. His voice carried across the night air, deep and commanding. Mr. Pichai, you have something that belongs to us. Bring it here. Now, all eyes turned to Sundar. The staff froze, their fear rising again. The pilot gripped his flashlight tighter, his knuckles white. Sundar straightened, the bag heavy against his shoulder. His assistant whispered urgently, Sir, don't go. They could be dangerous. They already are. Sundar murmured back. The masked man called again, louder this time. The bag, Mr. Pichai. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Sundar's mind raced. Giving them the bag might save his team in the short term, but it might also hand them something catastrophic. Keeping it, however, might put them all in immediate danger. He looked at the terrified faces of his assistant, his staff, even the exhausted pilot. Their lives were tied to his next choice. His phone buzzed one more time. Another message appeared. Do not hand the bag to them. They are not the ones we sent. Trust no one. Sundar's heart skipped. Two conflicting commands. One side telling him to give it up, the other warning him not to. Who was the real enemy? Who was the real watcher? He tightened his grip on the bag, his eyes locking on the masked man in the distance. Every muscle in his body tensed as the night grew heavier. The silence stretching like a blade ready to cut, and then, without warning, the masked man raised his hand again, this time signaling the others. Shadows began moving closer, their pace quickening, their presence no longer patient but threatening. Sundar took a step back, his voice low but firm to his team. Stay behind me. The bag felt heavier with every second, and he knew the moment of choice was coming. Whatever decision he made next could decide not just his fate, but the fate of everyone around him. The night air grew colder as the masked figures advanced, their steps echoing softly across the cracked runway, every crunch of gravel under their boots felt like a countdown, each second pressing heavier on Sundar's shoulders. He stood firm, the bag slung tightly against him, his team huddled behind him like frightened birds seeking shelter. The glow of the emergency lights from the damaged jet illuminated their faces, pale, anxious, and desperate. Sundar knew they were looking at him for answers, for strength, for survival. The leader of the masked group stopped again, now close enough for Sundar to see the glint of metal in his hand. Not a weapon yet raised, but a warning, a pistol gleaming faintly in the moonlight. The man's voice came deep, commanding, leaving no space for hesitation. The bag, hand it over now. Sundar's grip tightened. Inside, his thoughts were racing. The last message on his phone had been clear. Do not hand the bag to them. They are not the ones we sent. But who were they? Who had really orchestrated this? He was trapped between threats he could see and a mysterious voice he could not. Trust was a luxury he didn't have. His assistant clutched his arm, whispering with trembling lips, Sir, please, just give it to them. Maybe they'll let us live. Sundar looked into his assistant's terrified eyes and felt the weight of responsibility crush him further. He wanted to protect them, to shield them from harm, but he also knew that the wrong choice might unleash something far worse. The masked man stepped closer, his patience thinning. Last chance, a pichai. Do as we say, or your people suffer. Before Sundar could respond, his phone vibrated again. He glanced at it quickly, shielding the screen from the figures. Another message appeared. Stall them. Time is almost on your side. Stall them. His jaw tightened. He didn't know if he could trust this mysterious sender, but he sensed that immediate compliance would only end in tragedy. Taking a slow breath, Sundar lifted his voice, steady and calm despite the storm inside him. Before I hand you anything, I want to know who you are. What's in this bag that makes you come here with weapons? What do you want from me? The masked man let out a low laugh, though it carried no humor. You ask too many questions for a man with no options. The bag isn't yours to question. It belongs to us. Give it now. Or his words cut off as one of his men raised a gun higher, aiming towards Sundar's staff. Gasps broke out behind Sundar. His assistant gripped tighter, trembling. Sundar's pulse quickened, but his expression stayed firm. He raised his hand slightly, stepping forward, his voice calm but sharp. Stop. There's no need for violence. You'll get what you came for, but not if you kill us first. The leader tilted his head, studying Sundar as though trying to read the truth in his words. The silence stretched. Sundar felt his phone buzz again, but he dared not look this time. His eyes stayed locked on the masked man, his mind quietly praying for a way out. Then, from the distance, headlights appeared, two vehicles bouncing across the broken asphalt, speeding toward them. The masked group stiffened immediately. The leader barked a sharp command, and two of his men shifted into defensive positions. Weapons raised toward the approaching lights, Sundar's staff whimpered in fear. unsure if rescue or new danger was racing toward them. The leader turned back, his voice now edged with urgency. "Give me the bag now, before they arrive. This is your last chance." Sundar's heart pounded. If he gave it to them, whatever they wanted would vanish into the night. If he refused, they might retaliate before help or more enemies reached them. His phone buzzed once more. He slipped a glance at it, and the words made his breath catch. "Help is coming. Do not surrender the bag." The vehicles screeched to a stop nearby, their headlights blinding. Armed men jumped out, but these ones wore uniforms, military, or at least something resembling it. They moved quickly, forming a line, weapons trained on the masked intruders. A voice boomed through a loudspeaker, authoritative and commanding. "Drop your weapons, you are surrounded." The runway erupted in chaos. The masked men cursed, raising their guns higher, aiming both at Sundar's group and the approaching force. The air grew heavy with the threat of gunfire, every second teetering on the edge of violence. Sundar felt his team press against his, back shivering. Whispering prayers under their breath, the leader of the masked group turned sharply toward Sundar, his eyes blazing behind the mask. "You brought them here, didn't you? You've doomed everyone." Sundar shook his head firmly, his voice low but strong. "I didn't call anyone. But maybe they came because the truth always finds its way." The leader snarled, raising his pistol toward Sundar himself. The muzzle glinted inches from Sundar's chest, and then gunfire. Shots cracked across the runway, sparks flying as bullets struck the ground. Sundar dropped low instinctively, pulling his assistant down with him. His team screamed, ducking for cover behind the wing of the jet. The two forces clashed in a sudden storm of violence, gunfire echoing through the night. Sundar's pulse thundered in his ears as he crouched low, clutching the bag tighter. He could feel its weight pressing harder against him, as though reminding him that everything unfolding to nightlife, death, truth was tied to it. In the chaos, he dared to open the zipper slightly, just enough to glimpse what was inside. What he saw made his breath catch. Not money, not jewels, not explosives. Documents, sealed folders, stamped with markings he didn't immediately recognize. Among them, a small device blinking faintly. Like a tracker or transmitter. Before he could process, a hand yanked at his shoulder. The leader of the masked men stood over him, fury blazing, pistol aimed down. "You don't know what you're carrying," the man growled. "But I do. And if you want to live another minute, you'll give it to me." The battle around them raged louder, flashes of light breaking the night, shouts and screams blending with the roar of gunfire. Sundar's heart hammered as he clutched the bag close, his mind torn between survival and the mystery that had already gone too far. And then, as the leader pressed the cold barrel against his temple, Sundar heard the man's final words through. "The chaos, that bag holds the future of nations. Pichai. And if you refuse me now, the blood of millions will be on your hands." Asterisk, the cold metal pressed against Sundar's temple made his breath catch. The mass leader's words echoed in his mind like thunder. That bag holds the future of nations. Sundar tightened his grip around the straps, his knuckles white. His heart pounded, but his face stayed calm. Years of carrying responsibility had taught him one truth. Panic never solved anything. But still, deep inside, the question screamed. Louder than the chaos around him, what was in this bag that made men willing to kill, armies willing to intervene, and mysterious voices willing to guide him from the shadows? The gunfire around them grew sharper, flashes of light breaking the darkness as the masked group exchanged fire with the soldiers who had arrived. The sound was deafening, the smell of gunpowder burning into the air. Sundar crouched low, the world moving in blurs of motion, his team crying and ducking behind the wing of the damaged jet. Every second felt stolen, borrowed against fate itself. His assistant, trembling but defiant, shouted through the noise, "Sir, don't give it to him. We don't know what it is, but it can't fall into the wrong hands." The leader turned his fury toward the young man, pointing the gun his way. Stay out of this, boy, or you'll be the first to die. Sundar's chest tightened. His instincts screamed to shield his people, to protect them, but his mind also demanded clarity. He needed to know what this bag truly carried. Slowly, carefully, he spoke, his voice steady. If this bag is as important as you say, then killing me now will destroy your chance of ever retrieving it. Because if I die, the information dies with me. The leader froze, gun still steady, but hesitation flickering in his stance. Sundar pressed on, his eyes sharp, his tone like iron. Tell me what it is. Tell me why this bag matters. Or you'll never get it. For the first time, the man's voice cracked with something other than cold command. It carried frustration, even desperation. Inside are documents, plans, agreements, secrets of governments. Information not meant for the public eye. That device you saw is a transmitter, proof, evidence, leverage. With it, we control the truth. Without it, chaos spreads. Do you understand now? It isn't just about you, Mr. Pichai. It's about the world. Sundar's pulse quickened as the words sank in. He looked down at the bag, at the folders inside. He saw now the stamps on the papers, symbols of nations, of agencies, of power. These weren't just corporate documents or company secrets. These were matters of global security, but before he could question further, a bullet whizzed past, striking the ground near them. The leader ducked, dragging Sundar with him behind a slab of concrete. The battlefield raged, soldiers shouting, masked men retaliating, the night breaking into chaos. Listen to me, the leader hissed, gripping Sundar's collar. You have no idea what storm you've been dragged into. Those soldiers, they're not here to save you. They're here to take it for themselves. Don't trust them. Don't trust anyone. The only chance you have is to give it to me. Sundar's phone buzzed in his pocket again. His hand slipped to it, hidden from the leader's eyes. Another message flashed across the screen. Do not believe him. He lies. Hold the bag until we extract you. The truth must not fall into his hands. Two voices, two sides, both demanding loyalty, both swearing the other was the enemy. Sundar's mind spun. Who was he supposed to trust? The masked men who threatened his team? The armed soldiers who had come without explanation? Or the unseen figure behind the messages who guided him in silence? His assistant crawled closer, his face pale but his eyes filled with determination. Sir, don't give it to him. Please, I don't know who's lying. But I know one thing, you're the only one thinking about protecting lives right now. They only want power. Sundar's chest ached at the weight of those words. Leadership wasn't about choosing between easy answers. It was about holding the burden of impossible choices and standing tall. Anyway, the leader's patience broke. With a growl, he pressed the gun harder. Enough. The time for words is over. Give it to me now. Before Sundar could react, an explosion shook the ground, knocking everyone off balance. One of the vehicles nearby burst into flames, the fire lighting up the runway in a blaze of orange. Soldiers shouted commands, masked men scattered, and the air filled with smoke and chaos. Sundar used the moment to pull free, clutching the bag tight as he scrambled toward the wreckage of the jet. His assistant followed, dragging one of the terrified staff members with him. Bullets cracked through the smoke, men shouting in the distance. Sundar's lungs burned, his legs heavy, but he kept moving, every instinct screaming to protect the bag at all costs. He ducked behind the jet's broken wing, breathing hard, sweat stinging his eyes. His phone buzzed again. North side of the strip. Run now. Extraction waiting. Sundar looked north, the darkness stretching out endlessly. Somewhere out there, another force waited. Maybe a lie, maybe enemy, but staying here meant certain death. Turned to his assistant, who clung to him desperately. We have to move now. Where are we even following? The young man's voice cracked with fear. The only choice we have, Sundar answered, his voice low but certain. If we stay, we die. If we move, maybe we find the truth. He adjusted the strap of the bag, pulling it tighter to his body, then motioned for his team to follow. The smoke swirled, the gunfire raged, but Sundar pushed forward step by step toward the unknown. And just as they slipped into the cover of shadows on the north side, Sundar froze. Ahead of them stood another group of men, this time without masks, but armed and waiting. Their leader stepped forward, his face illuminated by the fire behind them. His smile was cold, sharp, calculated. "Mar, pichai," he said smoothly. "We've been expecting you. Hand us the bag and your nightmare ends here." Sundar's chest tightened. 2 enemies already behind him, and now a third force waiting ahead. The bag felt heavier than ever, not just with documents, but with the weight of impossible choices. The flames from the burning vehicle cast long shadows across the cracked runway, flickering like ghosts against the night. The soldiers and masked men were still exchanging gunfire behind him, but Sundar's attention was locked forward, where the new group stood waiting. Their leader stepped into the light, calm and confident, his men positioned in perfect formation. The way they moved, disciplined and deliberate, told Sundar this was no ordinary gang. They were trained, prepared, and very sure of themselves. "Mr. Pichai," the man said smoothly, his voice carrying across the distance. "You've done well to protect the bag until now. But this is where your journey ends. Hand it over to, and we'll take it from here. You and your people will walk away alive." Sundar's assistant clutched his arm, trembling. "Sir, what if they're telling the truth? What if giving it to them really ends this?" Sundar's eyes narrowed. He studied the man carefully. There was something about his tone, his smile, the way his eyes never blinked. It was too rehearsed, too controlled. These were not rescuers. They were another set of players in a game much larger than him. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He slipped it out discreetly, shielding it from the new arrivals. Another message glowed on the screen. "These men are the true danger. Run. Trust no one. The world depends on it." Sundar's chest tightened. He was surrounded by enemies, guided only by the voice of a stranger who had never revealed their face. Every side demanded the bag. Every side promised survival, and yet he knew the truth power was their goal, not peace. The bag had become the key to control, and whichever hands it fell into would shape the world in their image. His assistant whispered again, his voice trembling. "Sir, I'll follow whatever you decide, but please don't let them take it." Sundar's heart swelled with a mix of pride and sorrow. This young man, so terrified yet so loyal, believed in him completely. That belief carried more weight than any threat around them. The leader head took another step closer, his smile fading into impatience. "Enough waiting. Choose now, my pichai. Give me the bag or we take it from your corpse." Time slowed. Sundar felt the bag's weight pressing into his body, the straps cutting into his shoulder. Inside were documents, secrets, truths powerful enough to destabilize nations. The device, still blinking faintly, seemed almost alive, as if it was watching, waiting for him to decide. And then, with a sudden clarity, Sundar understood. The bag itself wasn't meant to be delivered. It wasn't meant to be traded, surrendered, or claimed by power-hungry hands. It was a test, one that revealed who would guard truth with integrity, even when fear and force pressed against him. He looked at his assistant, his staff, the terrified pilot, all of them staring at him for guidance. Then he lifted his voice, calm, steady, unshaken. "This bag doesn't belong to any of you," Sundar declared. "It doesn't belong to soldiers, masked men, or secret groups. It belongs to humanity, and if the truth inside it destroys nations, then maybe those nations were built on lies too fragile to survive." A hush fell over the runway. The leader's face darkened with rage. "You fool. You'll doom everything." Sundar shook his head slowly. "No. What dooms the world is silence, hiding the truth, controlling people with fear. I will not let that happen." And with that, Sundar swung the bag off his shoulder, pulled the blinking device free, and raised it high above his head. Everyone froze, masked men, soldiers, the third group guns still raised, but bodies rigid, waiting to see what he would do. He pressed the button. The device pulsed brightly, a burst of signal spreading into the night sky. The sound of static filled the air, sharp and unrelenting. Sundar's phone buzzed, and a final message flashed across the screen. Transmission complete. The truth is free. The leader screamed, rushing forward with fury, but it was too late. The data had been sent, the secrets released beyond their grasp. Gunfire erupted again, chaos exploding around them. But Sundar stood tall, his expression calm. Even as danger closed in, his assistant pulled at him, shouting, "Sir, we have to. Go." Together they ran into the smoke, the bag now empty of its power, its purpose fulfilled. Behind them, enemies fought over ashes, their ambitions shattered by a choice none of them expected. A choice to give the truth not to one group, but to the world. They stumbled into the darkness beyond the runway, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Finally, when silence returned, the young assistant fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Sir, you saved us. You saved everyone." Sundar placed a hand on his shoulder, his eyes tired but resolute. "No, I only did what was right. The truth was never mine to keep." In the distance, sirens wailed, lights flashing, as real rescue teams finally approached. Sundar looked back once more at the burning runway, at the chaos he left behind, and whispered quietly to himself, "May the truth bring justice, not destruction." And with that, he led his team forward into the dawn that was beginning to break. On the horizon, tired, shaken, but alive, and forever changed,